For centuries, Paisley has been a place of industry.
Paisley textiles and the weaving industry is well known all over the world.
A place of artistry.
Paisley weavers, they were regarded as the aristocrats of the trade.
A place of political action.
Paisley was at the heart of the radical movement in the 19th century in Scotland.
And at the centre of all that history is the Sma Shot Cottages.
It's a representation of how the weavers lived at that stage.
There was cottages like this all over the town. Nearly all of them have gone.
It's like stepping back in time.
Bringing Paisley's heritage into the 21st century.
The Sma Shot Cottages are Paisley's story.
Sma Shot's keeping that legacy of rebellion and the spirit of fighting for your rights alive.
Your past shapes your present and people are proud of it.
The Sma Shot Cottages in Paisley is a living museum to the town's history of weaving and textiles. It is owned by the Old Paisley Society, whose members have dedicated themselves to the cottages since the late 1970s.
I became involved in the cottages shortly after I retired. I wanted to do some kind of voluntary work.
Once I saw the cottages, I became very interested in them because it was Paisley's heritage.
I just always loved the history of Paisley, the history of the weavers, the radical weavers.
I originally discovered the Sma Shot Cottages on a Doors Open Day. I came round with a friend. Being a history geek, I was absolutely delighted with them. I was so excited.
I moved to Paisley over 40 years ago from Glasgow. I confess I didn't really know about the cottages before I started volunteering, and I came along, just thought it was wonderful.
I ended up working in the kitchen and the tea room.
I came down and trained as a guide. I also do lots of odd jobs, painting, electrical work, joiner work, anything needs done.
And fortunately I was embraced with open arms.
Visitors arrive at the museum through the Weavers' Cottage on Shuttle Street, which dates back to around 1750.
In the mid-18th century, weavers were a huge part of Paisley's industry.
There was cottages like this all over the town. It was very much part of the architectural and social fabric of the town, and nearly all of them have gone.
It's a great representation of the cottage industries of the time, how the weavers lived at that stage.
So the tour begins here in the weaver's kitchen, where the family would live and sleep. The men would then move next door to the loom shop to begin their weaving day.
From there, you cross the garden up into the larger foreman's cottage, which dates from a century later, around the mid-1800s.
It reflects the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution, where the industry in Paisley moved from the weaving to the thread mills and all the other industries that took over.
This cottage would have belonged to the foreman of a bustling Paisley thread mill at the time, and the guided tours allow visitors to experience what his home life may have looked like.
This is a display of affluence, of having made it, moved up in society, an aspiration to be middle class.
There's so many interesting bits and pieces. It just evokes so many memories for people.
The Old Paisley Society was established in 1977 by people who wanted to celebrate and preserve the town's weaving history by developing one of the last remaining cottages from that era into a living museum experience.
The Old Paisley Society was wanting a weaver's cottage, and they hunted and nothing was forthcoming.
Instead of an 18th century weaver's cottage, the Old Paisley Society bought the 19th century cottage on what is now Sma Shot Lane.
And lo and behold, I think it was only about a year after that the weaver's cottage came up for sale. A lot of the members of the Old Paisley Society put their own money into buying that weaver's cottage.
When the Old Paisley Society first looked at them, they were derelict. And then the members at that time all chipped in and did a lot of work.
They took it right back to the bare floorboards and the bare brick and built it from there. The photographs are really quite horrendous.
This is now our tea room. It used to be part of 4 houses, which they knocked apart and rebuilt. You can see several doors in the premise where people egress into the houses. When the Old Paisley Society took over this premises, a lot of the floor had been missing as the local winos who had been staying in the premise had been using it as firewood. The loom room that when we bought it over was a storeroom for a local company which was next door, and they'd used this building as a store. When times were slack, the weavers dismantled the looms and stored them, and you can see them up. If you look up into the eaves here, you can see sections of looms.
You can imagine it took a long time. You know, they would do one room and then the next room, and of course there wasn't a lot of money.
It took, I think, about 4 years eventually to get it opened. One cottage opened. They were selling teas and coffees out in the street to try and raise money, but eventually they got it opened, which was a mammoth task.
One of the key people driving the project forward was Ellen Farmer, a former Paisley mill girl who oversaw the reopening of the cottages in the mid-1980s as president of the Old Paisley Society.
Ellen Farmer, to me, was Mrs. Paisley, because what she didn't know about Paisley wasn't worth knowing. And she dedicated herself to these cottages.
Until she passed away in 2013, Ellen was a mainstay of the cottages and was awarded an MBE for her services to preserving Paisley's history.
Ellen's legacy is the fact that the cottages are still running today. She was there every Wednesday, every Saturday, and in between. She encouraged everyone, and miss her, still miss her.
This bell is called the Ferguson bell. It was given to us by Ferguson Cotton Mills when they closed. Because of the size and the weight of it, we took a lorry with a crane on it to come down the street outside and lift it over the roof into position. It's a great thing for the kids who love to ring the bell. I'll give you a small sample. Not just the kids, the mothers and fathers also.
Over the years, the Sma Shot Cottages has relied on donations from volunteers, visitors and local people to help furnish the museum.
You will see wonderful objects in the cottages, furniture, books, china and everything like that, and it's built up over the years into a really great collection.
You can see all of the items here are of the period and were continued to be used up until the 1950s and 60s, and we're very fortunate that these have been donated to us by local people.
People do bring their treasures. When people come in and they say, oh, you know, I remember this or remember that. My gran had one of these, or my mum, or what have you. They love to see it, and they love to bring their relatives to see what we have here. Your past shapes your present, and people are proud of it.
The most significant donation is the fully operational hand loom, authentic to the 18th century cottage industry, when weavers were the lifeblood of Paisley's economy.
So the loom is set up in such a way that the weaver can work 8, 9, 10 hours a day without really exhausting themselves. But that depends on the skill of the weaver in setting up the loom. When I press my foot in the treadle, it opens the shed there. Then with my right hand, I throw the shuttle across. So if you look at my feet now, I'm pressing a different treadle every time I throw the shuttle across. So it builds up line by line on the cloth like that.
We got our name, Sma Shot, from the small shot, or Sma Shot in Scots, a thread that goes across the fabric as the weaver is making the finished item. It's almost invisible to the untrained eye. It's absolutely essential to stop the fabric from unravelling.
The 19th century was a time of great political upheaval for the working classes.
Paisley was at the heart of the radical movement in the 19th century in Scotland.
The weavers were very well educated, very literary. They were inspired by American Revolution, the French Revolution, Thomas Paine's The Rights of Man. They were very well aware of what was happening in other parts of the world and wanted the same rights here in Britain.
The weavers were central in fights for working class rights, but at the same time, financially, they were in terminal decline.
They went through several depressions in the trade here where Paisley was regarded as the worst hit in the whole of Britain.
And because they were in such hardship, they knew that they had to fight for every penny that they were owed from the manufacturers.
Their most memorable dispute was over the Sma Shot, that invisible but crucial thread binding the fabric together, which many weavers were not being paid for.
After each line of weaving, you throw in a small shot. So if you have one colour and you throw the shuttle across, half your work is not being paid for. If you have 3 colours in the shawl, you throw the shuttle across 3 times, you're paid for the 3 colours, you're not paid for the small shot, so you're losing a quarter of your work. You could have 4 weavers in the same workshop, and one of them has to work 4 or 5 times as hard as the other to get the same wages as the other. So basically it's an unfair system of payment.
This dispute ended in 1856, when the manufacturers agreed upon a deal to finally pay the weavers for the Sma Shot.
And it was about 2 or 3 days before their annual holiday, which they took the first Saturday in July. The two became associated and it became Sma Shot Day.
Over the years, Sma Shot Day would become a broader celebration of workers' rights, trade unions and community organisations, and is still celebrated every year in Paisley. Today, the Sma Shot Cottages is growing ever stronger as an independent heritage museum.
We certainly have visitors from all over the world.
America,
Canada,
Germany,
Australia.
We even had a couple coming from Kashmir, and of course that was one of the sources of the Paisley shawls and Paisley pattern.
We're open Wednesdays, Fridays and Saturdays from April to September.
As well as free guided tours, the cottages offer a lovely and welcoming tea room and a carefully curated gift shop with souvenirs and crafts by local Paisley artists.
I love meeting new people all the time, and you certainly get a variety at the cottages. And it's really good being a part of something that belongs to Paisley.
I would say that the Sma Shot Cottages are Paisley's story. It's just such a welcoming and joyful place to be, with a wonderful, amazing, interesting story to tell.
I love it. It's like a treasure trove, and I've been a few times over the years, and every time that I come I learn something different. It takes you into another world and it just takes you back in time.
We were filming a mini period drama series called A True Mismatch, which is based in the Victorian times, and we felt that Sma Shot Cottages was a great candidate for using as a location. I think the cottages has such a great authenticity about it, and that's what we loved about it.
There is a lot going on in Paisley at the moment. The biggest challenge, I think, is getting it out there.
It's one of those things that is right on your doorstep, but when it is right on your doorstep, you don't always think to go, or you don't always go and see it.
It still makes me smile when people come in and say, I didn't know this was here. I have lived in Paisley all my life and didn't know this was here.
I think it's really important to visit places like the Sma Shot Cottages, not only to keeping the history of weaving alive, the message of rebellion and standing up for your rights as a worker. Those hard-won rights that we enjoy today were forged in industrial actions of the weavers back in the 1850s.
It does take a considerable amount of money to keep the cottages open each year, keep the buildings watertight, keep them safe.
It would be a shame to lose what is here, it really would. We need to keep it open, we need to keep going.
The community that it has around it is brilliant, and the volunteers are fantastic.
We've had so many hard-working volunteers over the years.
People can volunteer as a tour guide, or in the kitchen, or in the garden, or in the tea room, or to work in the shop. I think there's a little niche for everybody.
I would say come along. You would find that you would love it as much as I do, and I made a great many friends.
This is such a wee gem of a museum. It's been open for 40 years now, and I want to see it flourishing for the next 40 years and more.